Hello, I'm Dr. Q. Welcome to my channel. This is the 15th class of Principles of Economics. In this video, I will cover perfect computation in the short run. Perfect computation is also called pure computation. The two of them are exchangeable. And we are now focusing on the short run. So there are some economic resources that firms can change while the production capacity or firm size cannot be changed. There are fixed costs. From class 14, we learned that the number of firms can survive in an industry depends on the market size and the firm size. Market size is how many units the consumers would like to purchase at the market price, while firm size refers to the minimum efficient scale, which is the lowest level of output at which a firm can minimize long-run average costs. It can be interpreted as the optimal output level an average firm should produce at to minimize per unit cost. The number of firms a market can accommodate is the ratio of the market size and the firm size. As we discussed in lecture 14, if the market size or the amount consumers would like to buy is 20,000 units, while one firm can easily produce 20,000 or more than that, we just need one firm. This one firm is a monopolist. Nobody competes with it. Most of the local utilities are monopolies. If each firm produces 10,000 units, then we need two firms. This market structure is called duopoly. Duo means two. If each firm produces 6,000 or 7,000 units, we probably need 3 or 4 firms in this industry to produce for the society. It's something called oligopoly. When there are a small handful of firms existing in an industry, they may compete, but it's also convenient for them to cooperate and act like one to earn bigger profit. It's called collusion. Examples of oligopoly are the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, and the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. If each firm is capable of producing 200 units, then about 100 firms can survive in this industry. They probably produce similar but slightly differentiated products to be more competitive. Industries in clothing or shoes or anything you see plenty of advertisements about are monopolistic competition. If the market size is 20,000, while each firm can only produce limited amount, such as 10 units, then we need 2,000 of the similar small firms to satisfy the market. When the number of firms is large, the firms do not know one another. It's almost impossible for firms to unite and coordinate. All they can do is to compete and survive. Therefore, this type of industry is called perfect computation or pure computation. Please note that the numbers I gave here are not definite. It's not like 100 firms industry is absolutely monopolistic computation or 1,000 firms industry is definitely a perfect computation. It demands more information for analysis. I'm here just to help you build up the intuition. We're now focused on the study of perfect computation market structure. There hardly is any perfect computation industry in real world, but the agriculture commodity in international trade can be viewed as one. For agriculture, we're not talking about the produce you purchase from farmers market. We're not talking about the American agricultural sectors that are heavily supported by the government. We're talking about something like raw green coffee beans as international commodity. Commodity refers to a raw material or primary agricultural product that can be bought and sold in large amount. Coffee is the most popular beverage in the world. There are 2.25 billion cups of coffee consumed worldwide per day, and 450 million cups of them is contributed by Americans. Coffee is grown in more than 50 countries around the world, but mainly in South America and South Asia, including Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Growing coffee is labor-intensive. There are 25 million small-scale farmers producing 80% of the world's coffee. More than 25 million of the small farmers satisfy the perfect competition market characteristic that there are a large number of firms or sellers in the industry. Coffee consumption is a necessity but getting pricey. Consumers spend $74.2 billion on coffee as of 2015, but surely most of the money does not go into the pocket of coffee bean farmers. There are 10 steps from seed to cup of coffee. After harvesting and processing the cherries, the middlemen, exporters in the coffee production countries, also referred as coffee coyotes, purchase coffee directly from small farmers. They normally push the price of coffee cherries to insanely low, and farmers are at unfair disadvantage in bargaining, as coffee cherries are perishable, and farmers are barely breaking even in growing coffee, let alone investing on storage or transportation. How is the price of green coffee being determined? It is set by the New York Coffee Exchange. There are a great amount of reports and research showing how little the coffee farmer can earn, and how terrible their living and working conditions are. For a cup of coffee you pay in the morning, only 10% of the payment goes into the cost of coffee. Within the 10%, growers or farmers only get one slice. For example, if you pay $5 for a large cup of coffee, the farmer in Brazil gets about 5 cents. Then the exporters sell the coffee beans to large international coffee traders and importers of each country. The importers ship the coffee beans to roasters. In the United States, there are around 1,200 roasters. Roasters have the highest profit margin in the commodity chain as they transform green coffee into the aromatic brown beans that consumers can buy. Then the ready-to-sell coffee beans are distributed by wholesalers and retailers. The green coffee bean production has the characteristics in perfect competition market. There are very large numbers of farmers. More than 25 million of them produce a very standardized product: Arabica and Robusta coffee beans. It's the roasting process that differentiates the coffee products. In the regions that coffee cherries are grown, it's relatively easy to become a coffee farmer. It does not demand big investment or intensive training. It's also relatively easy to leave the industry if the farmers have an alternative method of making a living. The most important feature is that, as I described, coffee farmers can only take whatever the price the middlemen offer. They don't have any bargaining power. If the middlemen offer $1.05 for a pound of coffee, and the farmer cries about they cannot make a living out of it, then the middlemen say, "Fine, keep your coffee beans. I have millions of other farmers to talk to." The coffee farmers do not have resource or support to establish a cartel like the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, which means all the sellers sell at one price they agreed on, otherwise do not sell at all. There is a history of forming something known as the International Coffee Agreement, but it fell apart. The coffee farmers who invest a year's work into harvesting coffee really need money, and the coffee beans are perishable. Farmers do not have the luxury of standing up and fighting for fair pay. Therefore, the coffee farmers can do nothing but accept the market price. They can sell as many as they can produce at the price. In that sense, farmers in perfect competition are price takers. Let's put everything in graphical expression. Please note that the one on the left represents the coffee market. The 2.25 billion cups of coffee compose a downward sloping market demand, while the 25 million coffee farmers are the supply side. The market defines the equilibrium price. But one single farmer or firm in the market, he or she cannot influence the price anyhow. No matter how small amount or how big amount the farmer would like to sell within its production capacity, the market price is the only price the buyers would like to offer. If all firms simultaneously reduce output, then the price will increase. But 25 million farmers are lack of method or resource to work together and act simultaneously. An individual firm or farmer cannot do anything because its output represents such a tiny bitty fraction of the industry's total output. If a farmer increases price by 1 cent, it will lose all consumers to the competitors. No middleman coyote is going to purchase from this farmer at all. The output he or she can sell will be 0. If he or she accepts the market price, all output he or she produces can be sold. The middleman buyers are extremely sensitive to price change. The demand is perfectly elastic. Because the demand curve fixed by one firm is the equilibrium price. This is very unique. The market demand is a downward sloping curve composed by billions of consumers, while the slice of demand that each firm faces is a horizontal, perfectly elastic demand curve with a fixed price that is defined by the market. the firm cannot obtain a higher price by restricting its output, nor does it need to lower its price to increase its sales volume. This is new and can be confusing. Please spend some time study the difference of the two graphs between market and individual firm. Because one firm's production capacity is very limited by production nature. For our coffee farmer example, 2.25 billion cups of coffee divided by 25 million farmers gives us 90 cups. Each firm cannot influence market price anyhow in the short run by this small amount. The only thing they can do is accepting the equilibrium price defined by the market. Firm produces as much or as little within its production capacity as they wish at the market price. The demand curve each firm faces is perfectly elastic. Because the demand is market price, there are several unique but interesting conclusions we can draw for perfect competition firms in the short run. First of all, total revenue is the product of price and quantity. If we move the quantity to the left-hand side, total revenue divided by quantity is the price. But it's also the formula of calculating average revenue. So in this context, average revenue is equal to price. Secondly, the extra revenue gained by selling one more unit of output is always the market price. So marginal revenue is also equal to price. In sum, marginal revenue equals average revenue equals price. Please note that this is only true for individual perfect competition firm in the short run. It's not necessarily true for firms in any other market structure. Let's look at an example. If the market equilibrium price is $115, we can calculate the total revenue at each output level. As the output conveniently increased by 1 unit, the difference of two total revenue that are adjacent to each other is the corresponding marginal revenue. And average revenue is the ratio between total revenue and corresponding output Q. We can see that price, marginal revenue, and average revenue are the same, and the graphical expressions overlap. Now we want to figure out the firm's decisions or behaviors. In Lecture 11, we knew that every business is established to earn money, or maximize the profit, which is the difference between the money it collects out of selling goods or services and the cost of doing so. Again, little pi represents economic profit. So when a firm cannot do anything about the price, it can decide on how many units of output to produce. Of course, it will produce the amount of output to maximize the profit. This is the cost data for a firm we use in Lecture 13. Short-run production costs in total fixed, total variable, and total costs at different output level. And this firm has to take the market price, which is $115. The total revenue can be calculated as the product of output and price. then the difference between total revenue and total cost is the economic profit. It can be negative, which means there is an economic loss. Of course, the business will choose the output level that generates the most money. Is somewhere when quantity of output is 9. In graphical expression, the orange upward sloping straight line is total revenue, while the blue curve is total cost. When cost is higher than revenue, there is economic loss. At the crossing points, total revenue equals total cost. This time, firm earns 0 economic profit. We call them break-even points, or the business is only earning nominal profit. Please refer to Lecture 11, time point 16 minutes, 30 seconds for more discussion. The business will choose to produce at the output that maximizes the profit. The profit curve shows the same thing. The profit value for each output level is the vertical distance between total revenue and total cost curves. You can imagine tilting the balloon between total revenue and total cost until it's squeezed flat on the bottom and push the top part out. You get this profit curve. Although the profit maximization is very intuitive, business or firm normally uses marginal analysis to make the decision, as we discussed in Lecture 2. The marginal analysis helps firm to answer 3 very important questions. The first question is, should the firm produce? You may ask, what type of question is that if the firm is already established? Well, plenty of entertainment parks close in winter time when demand is low. Restaurants at places of interest, such as the beach in the northern part, closes temporarily during off-season time. Residents at Santorini Islands in Greece spend most of the year paint their houses in beautiful white with blue top, and makes money between June and September only. I will explain why in a minute, but should the firm produce or not is decided by market price and the firm's minimum average variable cost. If the market price falls on top of the minimum average variable cost, the firm should produce. Otherwise, the business should shut down or produce nothing. Next question is, if the business needs to operate, how many units of output it should produce to maximize the profit? The answer to this question is universal, which means no matter it is perfect computation or oligopoly or monopolistic computation or monopolist, no matter what type of firm, it should always produce up to the point that the extra revenue generated by 1 more unit of output equals the extra cost incurred by producing this particular unit, which means marginal revenue equals marginal cost. For perfect computation in the short run, as we discussed in previous slide, the marginal revenue is the equilibrium price. So for perfect computation firm in the short run, they should produce the amount of output when market price equals marginal cost. Please note that this is not a universal rule. This only applies to perfect computation firm in the short run. This combines the market condition with the firm's individual condition. The third question is, at the output defined by marginal analysis, what's the economic profit or loss? This surely can be calculated with the total revenue and the total cost approach. Further, as total revenue is a product of price and quantity, total cost is the product of per unit cost and quantity. So economic profit can be calculated as this. Price in perfect computation is per unit revenue. For example, the price is $115. For each unit I sell, I get $115 as revenue for selling that unit. Average total cost is per unit cost. For each unit I produced, it cost me, for example, $100. The difference between the two is per unit profit, $15. If I can sell 100 units, the total profit is per unit profit $15 multiply 100, which is $1,500. Let's use our hypothetical data for illustration. The first three columns are variables for the market. Therefore, the graphical expression on the left. The rest of the table is for one firm within the perfect computation market in the short run. And the graphical expression is on the right. Because at a price of $115, quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. Therefore, $115 is equilibrium price. Therefore, the demand curve, marginal revenue, average revenue, or price this firm is facing is $115. And we need to compare the marginal revenue or price against the corresponding marginal cost to find a point when they are equal to each other to decide on the output level. And we can tell that at output of 9, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So the firm should produce at 9 units of output. In order to calculate the profit, we know the price is $115. Corresponding average total cost is $70.56. And output is 9. So the profit can be calculated as this. We can get the same result using the graphical expression. The equilibrium price defined by the market is the marginal revenue of the firm. Its crossing point with the marginal cost defines the optimal output level. At this output level, we know the corresponding average total cost. The distance between price and the average total cost is per unit profit. Multiply the output. The meant area is the total economic profit. Pause and have a look. As we learned in Lecture 8, market is dynamic. Demand may change all the time. If demand for coffee decreases somehow, maybe because the economic downturn and people have less budget in purchasing coffee, or because the alternative tea is more popular. Anyway, demand for coffee decrease, which results in a decrease in market price. Then the firms within have to accept this new market price. So this market price is a new demand curve faced by individual firm within the market. It is also the marginal revenue. We need to find the point when marginal revenue or market price equals marginal cost to define the output. Then the next question is, what is the new economic profit? We know the price or average revenue. Now need to find the per unit cost to figure out the per unit profit. From the output, we trace up to the average total cost. The interesting thing is that this price level happens to fall onto the crossing point of marginal cost and average total cost. We previously covered in lecture 13 that marginal crosses average at average's extreme value. Average total cost now achieves its minimum value. Here, this market price happens to be the minimum average total cost as well. Therefore, the per unit profit is 0, and the total economic profit is 0. In sum, if market price happens to fall onto the crossing point of marginal cost and average total cost achieves its minimum, business is at the break-even point, earns 0 economic profit, or only earns normal profit. If, unfortunately, the market demand continues on declining and it declines to a new level and results in a new lower market equilibrium price, we first find the crossing point of price and marginal cost to define the optimal output level. Then from this output level, we trace up to the average total cost curve to find the corresponding average cost. Now, let's further look at the market price. It actually happens to fall onto the crossing point of marginal cost and average variable cost. Average variable cost achieves its minimum point. So we can rewrite the profit function as this, because price is equal to minimum average variable cost. And the difference between average variable cost and average total cost is negative average fixed cost. And the product of a negative average fixed cost and output is negative total fixed cost. Because the price or average variable cost is lower than per unit cost, the money firm makes cannot compensate all the cost. There actually is an economic loss, which is equal to the total fixed cost. You may say, hey, they're losing money. Why don't they shut down? Because remember, we're talking about short run. In the short run, there is a thing called fixed cost. If the business chooses to shut down, it still bears the fixed cost, such as the licensing fee paid to the government, or the rent the business agreed on paying for a year, or interest on loans, depreciation on equipment and buildings, and insurance premiums. This is economic loss even if business chooses to shut down and producing nothing. At the minimum average variable cost, if the business keeps running, it bears an economic loss of total fixed cost. If the business chooses to shut down, it still bears an economic loss of total fixed cost. So the business is indifferent at this point. The minimum average variable cost has a unique name called shutdown point. If the market demand unfortunately keeps falling to a lower level, lower than average variable cost, if the firm keeps running at the output when price equals marginal cost. A quick talk. You may say the price crosses marginal cost at 2 points. Why don't we use the first crossing point? The first marginal cost is at the same high level because the production capacity is not fully utilized at such a low production level. So the downward sloping marginal cost part is not within our consideration. Alright, at output when price crosses marginal cost, tracing up to the average total cost provides us the per unit cost. The orange area is loss if the business keeps operating. If it chooses to shut down, it only bears a loss of the fixed cost, which is the distance between average total and average variable cost multiply the quantity highlighted by the smaller red area. In order to minimize loss, it's obvious that business better shut down to avoid a bigger loss. There are plenty of graphical expressions combined with market analysis and short-run cost curves covered in previous lecture. So let's do a summary. The market demand and the market supply interact and define the equilibrium price. And therefore, the demand curve faced by one individual firm in the market. The perfect computation in the short run. This line is also the marginal revenue and average revenue curve of the firm. The minimum average total cost, the crossing point of marginal cost and average total cost, is the break-even point. If market price happens to be on this level, business does not earn economic profit nor bear economic loss. The market is dynamic, but as long as the equilibrium price defined by the market is somewhere higher than the break-even point, the price is higher than the corresponding per unit cost. There is an economic profit. This is true for all the price level above break-even point. If the market price falls in between the break-even point and the shutdown point, which means when price crosses the marginal cost curve, it happens in between the average variable cost and average total cost. This yellow area. The business should keep producing although it bears a loss, because the keep running business loss is smaller than the shutdown loss, which is total fixed cost. You probably have the experience of seeing some sketchy looking motels that are lack of maintenance on the side of roads. You wonder why it hasn't gone out of business or why hasn't the owner fixed up the place to compete with the chain hotels. The answer is probably because this is the only way to maximize the profit or minimize the loss in the short run. First of all, this type of motel locates at a historical popular area. It was built 30 or 40 years ago as there was a high volume of traffic back then. The new highways were built and it diverted traffic away from the location. Demand and revenue decline, and there barely is any chance to attract consumers no matter what. So if the motel cannot do anything about the money it makes or the price it can charge, motel has to cut the cost, such as the maintenance. By keep running as the price is lower than average total cost, the revenue cannot cover up all the costs. But the price is higher than the average variable cost, the money of keep running can cover the variable cost and partial of the fixed cost, which is better than shutting down and bear all the fixed cost. The owner hopes that producing service to generate some cash flows that offset all the variable costs and some fixed cost. But the business owner knows that this strategy won't last forever. Eventually, there is no further savings can be made as the maintenance cost is zero. The deterioration of the motel will lower the room rates again, and revenue further declines and cannot even cover up all the variable costs. Then the owner will tear down the structure, sell the property, and close the business permanently. But if the market demand declines and the business owners believe it is only temporary, the business may just shut down as opposed to permanently close or exit, which we will learn in next video. Shut down means the firm is temporarily suspending production and in hope of resumed production if market condition turns better. For example, a lot of businesses choose to shut down or are forced to shut down during COVID-19 pandemic. It does not mean that all of them would like to close permanently. And the examples I provide at the beginning of the lecture, plenty of entertainment parks close in winter time when demand is low. Restaurants at places of interest, such as beach in the north, close temporarily during off-season. Residents at Santorini Islands in Greece spend most of the year paint their houses in beautiful white with blue top and make money between June and September. Those are all short-run shutdowns as opposed to close permanently or long-run exit. So, because for each price level given by the market, there is an optimal output level can be found on the marginal cost curve. So the portion of marginal cost curve above the shutdown point is the firm's supply curve. Below the shutdown point, firm shuts down and produces nothing. This is a clearer and cleaner graph for the supply curve of one individual firm in perfect computation. We can get the same conclusion on the table. Again, in analyzing perfect computation in the short run, the first step is to find the shutdown point, which is the smallest average variable cost. The table tells us is 51, which means if the market price is below 51, the business should shut down and produces nothing. And those marginal cost is smaller than 51. Again, it's true that the very first two marginal cost values are big, But these high marginal costs are there because the production capacity is not fully utilized at such a low production level, so they are not within our consideration. Correspondingly, the business chooses to shut down and produce nothing at such a low price level. Ignoring the irrelevant information, for each price defined by the market, there is an optimal output level can be found on the marginal cost. The price and quantity supplied variables compose the supply schedule for one individual firm. And if we have 1 million similar firms in the market, at price of $55, one firm produces 6 units. 1 million of this type of firm produces 6 million. We can do this at each price level. Then we get the price and quantity supplied for the market, which compose the market supply. There is limited space, but the big capital S is the market supply. It's composed of all the individual firms' supply, which is the portion of marginal cost curve above its shutdown point. The capital sigma is a summation operator, means adding all the values horizontally up. The market supply is much flatter or more elastic than individual firms' supply. Now, we finally close the loop of explaining why supply curve is upward sloping that is covered in lecture 7. Let's do a practice. Pause and come back. Alright, let's collect information. The questions says that this is a perfect computation setting. And from the table, you see average variable cost. You should know that this is a short run setting, as long run doesn't distinguish variable or fixed. Everything is variable. Now, it says that the market price is $42. The first question you should ask is, should the firm produce? In order to answer that question, we need to compare the price against the minimum average variable cost. If price is higher than minimum average variable cost, we further do the analysis. Otherwise, you can jump to the conclusion that firm shuts down, produces nothing. From the average variable cost, minimum value is 14. $42 is higher than $14, so the business should produce. Now, produce at what output quantity? In perfect computation, we should use price equals marginal cost to find optimal output. Price is 42. When is the price equal to marginal cost? When output is 6. The last question is, at output 6, what is the economic profit or loss? We use per unit profit multiplied with the output to calculate. We know price is 42. The corresponding average total cost is $32, so the profit is $60. Next question, pause and come back. Alright, this question actually relates to lecture 13. It asks the total fixed cost, and apparently the table does not provide any information about the total cost. Then we need to figure out the total fixed cost from the average fixed cost. But the table does not provide average fixed cost information either. We can calculate the average fixed from average total and average variable cost. You may ask, okay, which average variable cost and average total cost should we use? Should we use information when output equals 1 or 2 or 3? Hey, it does not matter, because total fixed cost never changes. You can just use the first row of observation and get the average fixed cost as the difference between average total and average variable cost. Multiply with the corresponding output, the total fixed cost is 60. You can try with the other observations, like when output equals 2, and should get the same answer. Next question, pause and come back. This one is similar to the first question. You still need to go through the 3 questions. Should the firm produce? In order to answer that question, we need to compare the price against the minimum average variable cost. We knew the minimum value is $14. 22 is higher than 14, so the business should produce. Now, the firm should produce at what output? In perfect commutation, we should use price equals marginal cost to find optimal output. Price is 22. When is the price equal to marginal cost? When output is 4. The last question is, at output 4, what is economic profit or loss? We use per unit profit multiply with the output to calculate. We know price is $22. The corresponding average total cost is $31. So the economic loss is $36. And again, why does business keep operating whenever it bears a loss? Because if the firm shuts down, it has to bear a bigger loss, which is the total fixed cost of $60 we calculated in last question. Therefore, in order to minimize the loss, firm chooses to keep producing. Last one, pause and come back. When price is $6, what should the firm do? Should the firm produce? Compare price against the minimum average variable cost. Price is lower. The firm should shut down and produce 0. If it produced at market price of 6, the output would be 3. The per unit cost is 34. The economic loss is negative $84, larger than shutdown of loss of $60. So the business better not produce. Alright, that's all I have for this video. In next lecture, I will cover perfect computation in the long run. Thank you for watching. Please like or share the video and subscribe my channel for more lectures in economics.